The war in Ukraine began as a lightning-fast blitzkrieg, with Russia expecting to take Kiev within days and decapitate the Ukrainian government in one swift blow, but as history has shown, that plan quickly unraveled. What started as a confident special military operation devolved into a drawn-out war of attrition marked by grinding losses, logistical failures, and a contest of endurance where both sides poured staggering amounts of manpower, equipment, money, and research into scraping even the smallest edge. Yet now, that edge undeniably tilts toward Ukraine. In defending itself, Ukraine has orchestrated one of the most devastating asymmetric warfare campaigns of the modern age, one that has not only blunted Russia's offensive might, but also reinvented the very nature of war itself. Ukraine's methods are cost-effective, creative, and relentlessly adaptive, eroding Russia's capacity to sustain combat and reshaping global military thought in real time. When strategists talk about asymmetric warfare, they usually imagine insurgents fighting conventional powers with improvised weapons. But Ukraine's example has expanded that definition beyond recognition. Here, a nation under siege has weaponized not only ingenuity and technology, but also its enemy's inability to disengage. And nowhere is this transformation more visible than in Ukraine's rapid mastery of drone warfare, a field that, by 2025, has rewritten military doctrine. By early that year, Ukrainian drones were responsible for between 60% and 70% of all Russian equipment losses, according to the Royal United Services Institute, with some estimates, including those reported by the New York Times, suggesting figures closer to 80% by mid-2025. Before this conflict, drone warfare on such a scale simply didn't exist. Both sides have contributed to its evolution, but Ukraine has perfected it. The central strength of drones, especially the cheap modified commercial models Ukraine employs, lies in the enormous cost disparity between offense and defense. An FPV, first-person view, drone costs roughly $400 to $500 to produce, even high-end ones rarely exceeding four figures after modifications, yet they routinely obliterate Russian tanks worth $1.5 to $4 million or artillery systems worth $5 million each. That financial asymmetry translates directly into battlefield dominance. A swarm of disposable drones can destroy multi-million-dollar systems and even strategic bombers, each worth tens of millions. The point was driven home spectacularly on June 1, 2025, during Operation Spiderweb, when Ukraine deployed 117 FPV drones against 5 Russian air bases across 4,300 kilometers, destroying or damaging 41 aircraft, including 2 95MS and 2 22M3 strategic bombers. The total Ukrainian cost? Between $1,000 and $117,000 in drones and support, compared to Russia's loss of over $7 billion in aircraft, a staggering cost-exchange ratio of 1 to 58,000. Each day, this balance deepens Russia's strategic crisis as irreplaceable bombers, essential for cruise missile strikes, are lost to weapons cheaper than a smartphone. But beyond physical destruction, drones have transformed the psychology of war itself. Russian tank crews now know that a teenager with a gaming controller can guide a $400 drone that turns their $3 million machine into a smoldering wreck. Pilots face skies where survival odds diminish with every kilometer flown near Ukrainian defenses. In battles like Dobropilya, reports suggest only 1 in 10 Russian soldiers advancing survives long enough to surrender, casualties inflicted not by massive airstrikes but by the scaled precision of Ukrainian innovation. This shift is underpinned by an unprecedented surge in Ukraine's drone production capacity, from roughly 5,000 drones in 2022 to an expected 4.5 million annually by 2025, with goals of 10 million should funding and parts remain steady. That represents a staggering 3,750-fold increase in just 3 years, a pace Western procurement systems could never match. The secret lies in Ukraine's decentralized, hyper-agile production model. Hundreds of companies, from major tech firms to small garage workshops, form a distributed manufacturing web. Innovation spread within days through platforms like Brave One, ensuring the entire ecosystem evolves as one. A single discovery, a more efficient explosive charge, improved camera stabilization, or a new jamming countermeasure propagates instantly across the network. This collective intelligence powers swarm strategies that conventional militaries cannot easily counter. Traditional air defense systems are designed for single, high-value targets like missiles or aircraft, each interceptor missile costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. Against a drone swarm, such defenses become economically irrational. Even if machine guns or jamming take out the first few drones, the 10th one that slips through can still destroy a tank or radar system worth millions. Russia, hampered by a centralized and rigid military-industrial complex, struggles to keep pace. Its own state media admits the country lacks around 120,000 engineers to sustain the necessary development tempo. By contrast, Ukraine's distributed model makes every workshop a potential R&D center. Drones evolve faster than Russian countermeasures. Fiber optic guided drones immune to jamming appeared just weeks after Russia deployed its own versions. AI-assisted swarm coordination allows small drones to overwhelm defenses in coordinated bursts, with iteration cycles measured in weeks rather than years. The naval front tells a similar story. Ukraine's Sea Baby maritime drones, costing roughly $200,000 to $300,000 each, have forced Russia's Black Sea fleet to abandon Sevastopol, pushing multi-hundred-million-dollar warships into distant ports where they remain combat ineffective. At the war's start, Ukraine had virtually no navy. By 2025, it had regained control over the Black Sea's critical shipping lanes and restored grain exports to pre-war levels. This, too, is asymmetric warfare at its finest, disabling an entire fleet without needing one of your own. In the skies, Ukraine's early vulnerability was offset by crucial Western aid. Patriot missile batteries and layered air defense systems neutralized Russia's early advantage, grounding much of its 1,400-strong combat aircraft fleet. Most Russian pilots now rely on standoff glide bomb tactics, firing from beyond range rather than engaging directly, tactics that drastically limit their battlefield impact. The Center for Strategic and International Studies reported Ukrainian air defenses intercepting over 85% of Russian missiles and drones, with 11,500 interceptions between September 2022 and 2024 alone. Meanwhile, Ukraine has turned the tables, destroying at least 17 S-400 launchers, 3 radars, and 3 tractor vehicles according to Oryx's visual confirmations. Each S-400 system costs around $500 million. Ukraine destroys them with drones costing a fraction of that. Russian desperation has led to absurd improvisations. Satellite images show bombers covered in old tires or painted camouflage, attempts to shield them from drone strikes that underscore how far the once feared Russian Air Force has fallen. Yet the war extends beyond battlefields into information and cyberspace. Russia's propaganda machine, RT, Sputnik, and state TV, reaches over 100 million people. But Ukraine's decentralized communication through social media has been far more effective. From Zelensky's nightly video addresses to viral footage of farmers towing away captured tanks, Ukraine's narrative of courage and ingenuity has dominated global perception, fueling Western support and donations. Each Ukrainian victory, like the incursion into Kursk in August 2024, reinforced the world's confidence in Kyiv's capability to use aid effectively, prompting larger NATO contributions. Russia tried to counter through cyber attacks, over 10,000 in the first 2 years, but Ukraine's digital infrastructure held firm. The Cyber Peace Institute documented at least 2,700 retaliatory attacks against Russian systems by Ukrainian and allied hackers, versus around 575 Russian intrusions in return. This battle for perception has become its own asymmetric front. Every successful Ukrainian strike on refineries, depots, or air bases not only hurts Russia's logistics, but also publicly exposes its vulnerability. Between 2022 and June 2025, Ukraine launched over 300 attacks on major targets inside Russia, including ammunition depots, oil refineries, chemical plants, and strategic air bases. The cumulative effect crippled roughly 17% of Russia's oil refining capacity, with Reuters noting a corresponding 17% drop in oil and gas revenues between March 2024 and March 2025. These strikes don't just disrupt production, they strike directly at Russia's ability to fund its invasion. The September 2024 strike on Torapets, which destroyed 30,000 tons of munitions including North Korean imports, sent a clear message. Distance offers no safety. The economic toll is immense. Russia's 2025 military budget hit $142 billion, about one-third of total government spending and 7.2% of GDP, the highest since the Soviet Union. Hidden expenditures likely push that figure to 40%, a sign of economic overextension. Despite this, Russia has little to show on the battlefield. Oryx reports over 13,000 armored vehicle losses by October 2025, including roughly 4,150 tanks. Analyst Andriy Tarasenko warned that Russia's repairable stockpiles could be exhausted within 12 to 18 months unless annual production reaches 700 to 1,000 vehicles, but the current rate is closer to 250 T-90Ms and 460 BMP-3s per year. To compensate, Russia digs into storage, deploying progressively older tanks, T-62s by 2022, T-55s by 2023, relics of the 1950s on a 21st century battlefield. Meanwhile, Ukraine's distributed model keeps costs low and innovation high. Russia's expenses rise as it depletes Cold War reserves and struggles under sanctions restricting advanced components. Oil and gas revenues, once half the state's income, fell 35% year over year by mid-2025, with EU sanctions shaving $12.4 off each barrel's price. To compensate, Moscow plans a VAT hike from 20% to 22% in January 2026, funneling the difference straight into the military. The human toll compounds the crisis. Over 1 million Russian casualties have been reported since the invasion began, with daily losses climbing from 560 at the start to over 1,300 by 2025. Military personnel now make up 3% of the labor force, up 40% since 2020, pulling workers from industries vital to sustain the economy. Another million Russians fled the country in 2022, further draining talent. Russia's once prized defense exports have collapsed as potential buyers watch its equipment destroyed on camera. Contractors face impossible conditions, either accept below-rate contracts or risk closure by the state. Even Putin has hinted at scaling back defense spending in 2026, an implicit admission that the war effort is unsustainable, yet reducing spending while Ukraine's power grows exponentially only accelerates decline. Ukraine's military budget soared from $6 billion in 2021 to over $70 billion by 2025, with $25 billion devoted solely to procurement. Unlike Russia, Ukraine's expenditures yield direct results through agility and efficiency. Asymmetric warfare, once seen as the weapon of the weak, has become Ukraine's lever of dominance. Russia faces an existential paradox. Putin's regime is tied to victory, but the longer the war drags on, the weaker Russia becomes. Its economy is bleeding, its population strained, its military prestige shattered. Each month of war drains resources that can no longer be replenished, pushing Russia toward a breaking point where sustaining the war and sustaining the state become mutually exclusive. When that moment arrives, historians will look back on Ukraine's transformation as the turning point. A revolution where distributed innovation, cost-effectiveness, and information superiority defeated brute conventional power, forever changing how wars are fought and won. Thanks for watching. To understand how Ukraine continues to revolutionize modern warfare, check out our analysis of its expanding military budget through donations, and to stay updated on the war's progress and global geopolitics, subscribe to The Military Show for daily videos.